How did one man's dream to unite an entire continent lead to his downfall? What if I told you that the first leader of independent Ghana was overthrown not just for his policies at home, but for a vision so powerful it threatened the global order? This is the story of Kwame Nkrumah, a leader who dared to dream of a United States of Africa and paid the ultimate price. Stick around to uncover the shocking details of the coup that silenced one of Africa's most influential voices. So, who exactly was Kwame? Born in a small village in the Gold Coast, what we now know as Ghana, Nkrumah was a brilliant student who traveled to the United States and the United Kingdom for his education. But he wasn't just there to study. He was soaking up ideas about freedom, self-determination, and Pan-Africanism. He met other future African leaders and black intellectuals, and a fire was lit within him. He returned to the Gold Coast in 1947 with one mission: to liberate his people from British colonial rule, and he wasn't going to be patient about it. His mantra was self-government now. He was charismatic, a powerful speaker, and he connected with the ordinary people in a way no leader had before. He organized strikes, boycotts, and mass rallies, a strategy he called positive action. The British saw him as a threat and threw him in jail. But even from his prison cell, his influence grew. In 1951, his party, the Convention People's Party, won a landslide victory in the colony's first general election. The British had no choice but to release him. He walked out of prison and straight into the role of Prime Minister. On March 6, 1957, his dream became a reality. The Gold Coast became Ghana, the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence. On that day, Nkrumah declared, our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. This single sentence set the stage for everything that was to come. Nkrumah didn't just want to free Ghana. He wanted to dismantle the entire colonial system that had carved up Africa for centuries. His vision was a United States of Africa. He imagined a continent with a unified military, a single currency, and a common foreign policy, a powerful, self-reliant Africa that could stand on its own 2 feet and negotiate with world powers as an equal. This was a direct challenge to the Cold War superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, who were busy trying to pull newly independent nations into their respective orbits. It was also a threat to the former colonial powers, like Britain and France, who still wanted to maintain economic and political influence over their former colonies through a system known as Nkrumah wasn't subtle about it. He wrote books, gave speeches, and poured Ghana's resources into supporting liberation movements across the continent. He hosted conferences, trained freedom fighters, and provided financial aid. Accra, the capital of Ghana, became the revolutionary heart of Africa. To the west, Nkrumah's dream of a united Africa wasn't an inspiring vision of liberation. It was a geopolitical nightmare. A united Africa could control its own vast natural resources, cocoa, gold, diamonds, and oil. It could set its own prices and build its own industries, breaking the chains of economic dependency. Nkrumah's socialist-lining policies and his friendly relations with the Soviet Union and China only added to the West's paranoia. They saw him as a communist pawn, a domino that could lead the entire continent into the Soviet camp. They failed to see that he was playing his own game, an Africa-first game. This put a massive target on his back. The moment everything changed came on February 24, 1966. Nkrumah was on a peace mission to Vietnam, attempting to mediate an end to the war. He was on a plane, flying from Accra to Beijing, when the trap was sprung. Back in Ghana, a group of military officers and police, led by figures like Colonel Emmanuel Katoka and Major Akwasi Afrifa, launched a coup d'etat. They codenamed it Operation Cold Chop. In the early morning hours, they seized control of the national radio station, the airport, and key government buildings in Accra. They announced to the nation and the world that Kwame Nkrumah and his government had been overthrown. The soldiers claimed they were saving Ghana from economic chaos, corruption, and Nkrumah's dictatorial rule. And to be fair, Ghana was facing serious economic problems. Nkrumah's ambitious industrial and infrastructure projects, while forward-thinking, had been expensive and had driven the country deep into debt. Fallen prices for cocoa, Ghana's main export, made things worse. There were shortages of basic goods, and public discontent was rising. Nkrumah had also become increasingly authoritarian. He had declared Ghana a one-party state and passed a law that allowed him to detain people without trial. He built a significant personality cult around himself, with his image on stamps and currency, and titles like Osaju Fo, which means Redeemer. So, when the coup happened, there were some Ghanaians who genuinely celebrated in the streets, hoping for a better future. But this was only part of the story. The truth of what happened that day was far more complex and sinister. So, how was Nkrumah, this giant of African liberation, silenced so effectively? The coup itself was just the final act. The ground had been prepared for years. Declassified CIA documents have since confirmed what was long suspected: the United States was deeply involved. The CIA had been monitoring Nkrumah for years. They had agents in Ghana, and a station chief at the U.S. Embassy in Accra was actively cultivating relationships with disgruntled military officers. A 1965 memo from the U.S. National Security Council stated that a coup in Ghana would be a reassuring development for U.S. interests. While the documents don't show a direct order from the White House to stage the coup, they reveal that the CIA was aware of the plot, provided encouragement, and was ready to exploit the situation. The plotters knew they had the tacit support of a superpower, which emboldened them. When the coup happened, Nkrumah was thousands of miles away, completely isolated. He heard the news of his overthrow from his hosts in China. He was a president without a country. The new military regime, called the National Liberation Council, moved swiftly to dismantle his legacy. They opened the borders, released political prisoners, and purged Nkrumah's supporters from the government and civil service. They immediately reoriented Ghana's foreign policy towards the West, welcoming advisors from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Nkrumah was stranded. He accepted an offer of asylum from his friend, President Sékou Touré of Guinea. From the Guinean capital of Conakry, Nkrumah was made honorary co-president. He continued to broadcast messages to the people of Ghana via radio, urging them to rise up against the military junta. He wrote books and plotted his return. But he would never set foot in Ghana again. He lived in exile, a lion caged, watching his dream of a united Africa crumble from afar. The aftermath of the coup was a masterclass in political rebranding. The new military rulers, with the help of Western media, launched a massive propaganda campaign to discredit Nkrumah. They painted him as a corrupt, power-hungry dictator who had bankrupted the country for his own selfish ambitions. His statues were torn down, his books were burned, and his name was erased from public places. The dream of a united Africa was portrayed as a foolish and expensive fantasy. The coup sent a chilling message to other radical Pan-Africanist leaders across the continent. If you challenge the global power structure, if you try to forge a truly independent path for Africa, you will be dealt with. The assassination of Patrice Lumumba in Congo a few years earlier, and now the overthrow of Nkrumah, created a climate of fear. Many African leaders chose a safer path, aligning themselves with either the West or the East, and abandoning the more radical vision of continental unity. Ghana itself entered a long period of political instability, with a succession of military coups and fragile civilian governments. The economic relief promised by the coup plotters never truly materialized. The country remained dependent on foreign aid and loans, caught in the very neo-colonial trap that Nkrumah had fought so hard to escape. Nkrumah himself died in 1972 in Romania, where he had gone for medical treatment for cancer. He died in exile, a lonely and tragic figure. His body was initially buried in Guinea, but in 1972, after pressure from the public, the Ghanaian government allowed his remains to be returned and buried in his hometown. It was a quiet, almost reluctant acknowledgement of the man they had overthrown. So, what is Kwame Nkrumah's legacy today? For decades, his name was controversial in Ghana, but overwhelming perceptions have shifted. Many Ghanaians and Africans across the continent now see him as a visionary leader who was far ahead of his time. They recognize that many of the problems he tried to solve, economic dependency, political fragmentation, and foreign interference, are still plaguing Africa today. His dream of a United States of Africa, once dismissed as a fantasy, is now the official goal of the African Union. The O, which was founded in 2002, is the direct institutional successor to the Organization of African Unity, which Nkrumah helped create in 1963. While the O is still a long way from achieving Nkrumah's vision of a full political and economic union, the ideal lives on. His books, like neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, are still read and studied by students and activists around the world. He is remembered not just as the founder of modern Ghana, but as the father of African nationalism. In 2009, Ghana's parliament declared his birthday, September 21st, as Founders' Day, a national holiday. The Nkrumah Mausoleum and Memorial Park in Accra is now a major landmark, a place of pilgrimage for Pan-Africanists from across the globe. Kwame Nkrumah's story is a powerful and cautionary tale. It's a story of incredible vision and tragic downfall. It reminds us that history is often written by the victors, and that the fight for true independence is a long and difficult road. But it also shows us that an idea, a dream of a united, free, and prosperous people can never truly be silenced. Thanks for watching. What do you think about Nkrumah's vision for Africa? Was he a hero or a dictator? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories of leaders who dared to change the world. See you in the next video!